Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Biggs, CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting, and the host of Real Conversations with Michelle, coming to you with the next episode of Real Conversations. And our topic today is men's mental health. Minds Matter with a specific focus on our Black men. For those of you who are new to my platform, I leverage Real Conversations to talk about topics that many of us may have encountered in our lives with the goal that something that is shared, you'll be able to take this information and apply it in a positive way for yourself. This is a learning and growing platform. So we are learning to and growing together. Like anything else, I will say do your research, right? The information that you're hearing are the views of the panelists and do not represent the views of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting. But again, like anything else, you do want to make sure you're doing your research. So I have a great group of gentlemen who are going to be joining me today. There's nothing better than hearing from individuals who may have experienced some of the things that we're going to be talking about themselves. And I also have some gentlemen who are professionals who are actually helping in the supporting role of individuals who are dealing with mental health in a variety of ways. So let me bring up my esteemed panel. And first up, I'm going to introduce Mr. Jasmine Spain. Hey, Jasmine.
Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So tell viewers about yourself.
Well, thank you again, Michelle, for just creating this dialogic space for this evening. My name is Jasmine Spain, and I tell everybody that the job I get paid for is serving in the field of higher education as the assistant vice president of student support at Pitt Community College in Greenville, North Carolina. But the job I was made and called by the Most High to do is to serve as the founder and chief visionary officer of the MAIN initiative, which stands for Males Addressing Issues and Needs. But I'm also the founder and president of the nonprofit You Good Bro Incorporated. And so I personally represent for the brothers, who grew up in a single parent home with no father. I personally represent for the brothers who were molested at the age of 5 by his female babysitter. I personally represent for the brothers who have trust issues, who had trust issues with Black men by not having a father in the home, but being a hypocrite for being responsible, just for Black boys and mentoring. I also personally represent for the brothers that, despite my own level of success, that I've dealt with imposter syndrome. And I personally represent for brothers who contemplated suicide and almost did so, but by the grace of God did not execute. But I also personally represent, to this day, and with the acceptance of the thorn in my own flesh, as Paul puts it in the Bible, that I'm living as a Black man, that's diagnosed and succeeding, with mental health issues, being personally diagnosed with bipolar disorder too. So again, I personally, I represent for a lot of brothers today. So that's who I am. And, again, thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to share the stage with these.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. And thank you for being so transparent about your personal issues. And that's what I love about this platform. Next, I want to introduce Mr. Will Morgan. Hey, Will.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. So
Thank
tell
you.
everybody a little bit about yourself. Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you very much for joining.
Right. Well, I do want to thank you for your invitation to this platform. I am a licensed clinical social worker associate and licensed clinical addiction specialist. I actually work as a therapist providing outpatient therapy, and I also contract with Franklin County Schools to do school-based mental health. I also own Morgan's Consulting Group, which is my own company that assists companies with providing mental health services. I help them with attrition management, retention, establishing networks within their catchment areas that they serve community.
Yeah. Appreciate you for joining. Thank you, Will, for introducing yourself. Next up, Mr. Richard Thrash. Hi, Richard.
How you doing? Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, just want to say, Michelle, thank you. I really appreciate this time and opportunity. I never take that for granted. My name is Richard Thrash Jr. I am actually a licensed clinical addiction specialist associate with Sigma Health Services. I'm also a qualified mental health professional, and I work teen SAOP and I work adult SAOP, dealing with substance abuse issues. And then I work with some of the men groups dealing with substance abuse issues and those who have transitioned out of prison, trying to get them back on track. I'm also a assistant pastor / ordained elder for Millennium Revival Center. Shout out to my pastor, Senior Pastor M. Lamont Cooper. I'm also a special education teacher. As you can see, I love the youth. I love just serving. That's one of the biggest things. I like to serve those who can't always serve themselves. And I'm just really also excited about working with sexual risk avoidance education, helping young people choose the best life, abstinence to ideally marriage. And that's me right there, and looking for all the things that's going on today.
Yeah, and I'm excited about all of you guys, because you guys are, like I said, you're representing the Black males, because you're also talking about your own experiences, and some of you are supporting men in these spaces and young men as well. So I appreciate you. Next is my colleague and also fellow coach, Mr. Lorenzo Clarity. Mr. Lorenzo.
Hey, Michelle. Hello to the audience, and I'm just proud and privileged to be amongst this group. I love the energy. So I'm Lorenzo Clarity. As Jasmine put it, the job that I get paid to do every single day is the head of global recruitment for a big healthcare company, working alongside excellent people. And as Michelle said, she and our colleagues. But what I'm passionate about and what I do think is my calling is to support people. So I'm the president and founder of Clarity Group Coaching and Consulting. It's a consulting company, coaching company that I've had over at least a decade. The coaching company was born out of really a connection that I had with a fellow friend of mine that went to Hampton University, who always said that I was his personal coach. And when he told me that, I was like, what are you referring to? And then he planted that seed, and that seed has grown. And so it's something that I could do, 24 hours every day, to really pour myself into people, but also bring the best out of people. So when I was asked to be a part of this panel, I didn't hesitate. I'm also married. I'm also a father, and I'm also a son. And so this topic is near and dear to my heart for a number of personal reasons. And so I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And next we have representing our young men, Mr. DJ Morrow. Tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm still a student. So originally I attended the United States Military Academy, and my Cal year I transferred to UConn. I majored in biology and neuropsych. I got my degree. And once I finished up, I've just been working in the field ever since. I'm an aspiring psychiatrist. I was originally in the Choice Not Chance documentary, which was a documentary where they took a panel of young men and older men and pretty much discussed the major choices in their lives, and whether it was a chance or choice, where they got and how they got there, and their experiences. So this is a great opportunity, I think, for me just to be able to kind of shed light on how it's kind of been for the younger people. But so far in my site work, I've worked on inpatient units. I've worked doing research with all age ranges, young to old. So I just hope to be doing more of that as it continues.
Yeah, thank you. So fellas, I'm gonna dig right on in, and I have to say to my followers, apologies. I know Pastor Darrell Young was supposed to join us, and he wasn't able to last minute. And Tone Terrell, he wasn't able to join, but we're gonna keep it moving, because I know these men will represent those who were not able to attend. So I'm gonna start off, fellas, and just question for you on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel like you've dealt with your mental health over the course of the year and a half? Because there's been a lot going on between COVID, all the racial stuff going on last year without Black men, and we know it was even beyond then. But we know a lot of people, it came to light last year for a lot of people started paying attention to it, right? So between that and just everything else, how do you feel like you've dealt with your mental health scale of 1 to 10? Yeah, go ahead, Lorenzo.
So Michelle, what I would say is I would give you a from to within the last year and a half. I think I've gone from probably 6, 7 to probably like maybe 8, 9. It was hard in the beginning just because COVID and a lot of things that was happening within the world. We're all working from home, constantly busy. It was really a point in time where I had to do some deep reflection to really think about where I was mentally, and then where I needed to be in order to show up well. So,
yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. TJ, how about you?
I would say I probably stayed at a solid 8, but
Okay.
I would say that was probably because beforehand my stress level was already pretty high. I was working full time in a hospital and going to school. So COVID, I was actually talking to a friend about this, how people can benefit from particular situations. COVID made my life a little bit easier. I didn't have to commute to school, so I was able to work, do school at home. And I was on the front lines in the beginning in the Northeast working during the pandemic. For me, it wasn't something that I didn't realize how serious it was until it was more serious, So it was, for me, it was a interesting opportunity, but I'd probably say that I was able to stay mostly positive, but I also did not have as many like family effects. And like that.
Yeah. How about all the racial stuff that was going on, whether it was George Floyd? I mean, we can go down a couple of people, name them, right? How did that impact you personally?
I would say that, I guess, from a clinical standpoint, some of the gentlemen here would say, I probably should have been affected more than I was. And I think that plays into my generation kind of, they've gone over this whole constantly seeing executions and things like that. Unfortunately, it's kind of become like what anybody in the hood might say, it became a this happens type of mentality.
Right.
You're upset, but you're upset only to an extent because they've constantly replayed it in front of you. And I do think that's had an effect overall and kind of desensitizing us to that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be more deeply affected, I say, than I was in the moment,
Right. Cool. Yeah, definitely some generational things there. And Richard and Will, you guys may be able to speak to some of that too later on. Will, how did you handle your mental health? 1 being not so well, 10 being real well.
Initially, I was doing really well in the beginning when, the pandemic first hit, because I was in school. So working full time, school full time, 24 hours of internship. So, and then being a husband and a father. But as I began to stay at home more and not getting out and engaging with the peers in my cohort, it began to really, really impact me. And I dipped about like a 5, 6. And then I began to adjust, communicating more, relying on the support of my peers, social work program, support from my family and friends. I began to come out of that little isolation, and so at the end of it, I was around an 8, really feeling really good. And more importantly, it gave me the opportunity to see how individuals that are seeking recovery support and mental health counseling, how they struggle without the supports. I always say that I could be someone seeking support if I didn't have the supports that I have, the support system, people that call me and ask me how I'm doing and do check-ins.
Yeah.
As far as the George Floyd stuff, for me, I'm a bit older, 46, and you hear people say, "Oh my God, I never saw this. I didn't know that this was America." And I always say that it's always been like this. We've always had police brutality. It was in our music. It was in the 80s and those things. And as bad as times got during the pandemic allowed the rest of the world to see what we in our community have always been experiencing.
Yeah.
It brought attention to, social injustice.
Mm-hmm.
So as bad as it was for many of us, the loss of life and sickness and all those things, it actually created an opportunity.
Yeah.
Now that there are other people at the table with us having this conversation, not just crying out for help.
Yeah. Thank you, Will. And Will, you're going in and out. I don't know if it's your connection. I don't know if anybody else is seeing that. Just check to make sure you don't have anything else open. So we can just check in between as we talk to everyone else. Richard, how about you?
Yeah, I could say it was just interesting. Before the pandemic, I just noticed on the spiritual side that I said, man, there was grandmas, mothers, people passing away. Then the Kobe situation, and please don't blame me and say it was my fault. But I said, man, this is gonna be a year and going forward of dealing with some death. That's what I kind of said. And then you just start seeing so many different things happen. And then that's when the pandemic started really hitting. And then I like, okay, it don't seem that serious. But then when it came to the United States and you just start seeing people leaving, and even to the point of coming close to home, I lost an uncle due to COVID, and others that was in the church that I knew for years, and they just start leaving this place. So even as a Christian, that got kind of scary because it's like, Lord, I want to live longer. I got too much to do. I got a lot of stuff I want to do, and maybe this might be my time to go. And there was times where I'd be in the middle of the night and can't breathe, and I freak out and go to the hospital, go to the VA or whatever. And it was all because of everything you've seen in the media. 1 million people died. They just kept showing that, and that'll get to you. It'll get to you, definitely mess with you on a mental level. So there was times where I wasn't stable as I should, but I went back to praying and seeking God, and that pretty much got me through it. When I was at that 6 and 7, I said, Lord, let me stay focused. Got to the 8 and 9, but then it dropped again. I don't know if Will can even, even relate to this, but there was times where I'm a counselor, so there was more people seeking counseling.
Yeah.
So I'm helping everybody else. But I said, I need to talk to somebody too.
Yes. Yes.
So that was that up and down. So I had to slow down and make sure I was able to talk to somebody, a counselor myself, just to make sure I'm stable. Because sometimes people think that we are the heroes and don't nothing happen to us. But yeah, counselors got to seek counselors too as well.
Absolutely.
So I can say today I'm at a probably 8.5, 9, because I wouldn't say 10 because there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that honesty. Did I miss anybody? Did everybody answer that question?
No,
Yeah, Jasmine. Yeah.
And thank you for this transparent space again, man. Be honest with me, man. Honest with you. For me, it started out around about an 8, because professionally, I mean, just like many others, man, I was doing fine, taking full advantage of my ability to consult with colleges and agencies out, across the country, doing some cultural competence training, diversity, equity, inclusion, professional development, but also to be able to provide some personal development experiences, for Black men and boys in my work. But, being able to do it from a virtual space is a blessing. You know what I mean? Especially, helping folks deal with the racial injustice that we have been witnessing. But it also was tough for me personally, where, all of you are aware that as a community organizer or a programmer, an educator, an advocate, kind of like what Richard was saying, you become someone that the community looks for direction, but at the same time, you need support as well. So I remember even after the George Floyd murder, I slept 6 hours in like 3 days. That was all I got because of the messages, phone calls, and a lot of them wasn't even from people from within my own community, but from throughout my network, just trying to figure out what can we do in our areas, what can we do in our communities, how can we organize, how do we talk to our young Black boys about what we're seeing, and also talk to Black men. But also over the last year and a half, I mean, I kind of hit rock bottom in a couple of areas in my life. I actually suffered from a severe case of COVID back in August of last year that actually put me down for about a month. It's like, 9 months later, I still have some of the quote unquote COVID long effects right now. I had 14 deaths that happened in the last year and a half. But then also some finally peeling back some layers of trauma that I had not that I had not addressed it unconsciously that I thought I had dealt with, but I really hadn't. So I'm currently, on this journey of healing physically as well as emotionally and mentally in some areas. So I'm probably not as vulnerable as I've ever been, but I'm also as optimistic than I've ever been about what God is going to do in my life, and being able to be transparent in this room full of brothers. So while the country is healing from COVID and systemic racism, I'm over here, going through my own personal level of liberation and healing as well. So
Yeah. And again, guys, thank you so much for your honesty. So, I'm gonna go through a couple of definitions because I want to just make sure we're all on the same page. So when we talk about mental health, mentalhealth.gov talks about it as it includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. So when we're talking about mental health, that's the space in which we're talking about it. And then I pulled up some statistics because I always want to make sure, when I'm talking about a topic, if I can bring that to light, I think it's helpful. So here's some statistics I found on a site called therapyforblackmen.org. And it says 20% African Americans are 20% more likely to have serious psychological distress than whites are. Among men aged 18 to 44 who had daily feelings of anxiety or depression, non-Hispanic, Black, and Hispanic men were less likely than non-Hispanic white men to have used mental health treatments. And then suicide is the third leading cause of death for African American males ages 15 to 24. And then African American men ages 20 to 24 have the highest suicide rate among African Americans of all ages, male and female. So, again, this topic is just so important when you think about, the impact on mental health and what it could lead to. So, let me dig into some deeper questions. So, in your view, what are some of the factors driving mental health issues among Black men? And do you think these factors are different from those specific factors for men in general? So, what are some factors driving mental health issues among Black men?
Well, I definitely think one of them is economic distress.
Yeah.
You got there's a study out there. There's about say 8% white men that's under the poverty level, but there's 22% of the African Americans that's under that poverty level. So there's some economic distress right there that's causing that problem that some others that don't deal with. And then you just think about COVID. Think about the situations where people was losing jobs. They closed down the whole place, and you had people out there that said, I need this job to pay my bill, and they don't got it. And someone was getting put out of house. They had to hurry up and put some laws in place so these people can have a place to live. So that right there alone caused a lot of issues that's going on, especially on top of issues that they might have already had, and then just added to that situation.
Yeah.
So I think economic distress is one of them.
Yeah.
So I'll just add to that.
Yeah.
So he's right on. And so I also think like incarceration, everybody knows that, the incarceration rates are highest amongst African American males. I see it within my own personal family. So just an example, I have two generations, actually three generations that have been affected by incarceration. I have aunts now who have sons that have been in prison for many, many years. And then I've seen how that's led to stress, that's led to like addiction. I have uncles who are in the same exact place. I have cousins who have gotten out of prison.
Hold on. Go ahead, keep talking. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things here. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I have cousins who have gotten out of prison, and you would think that prison is a place where people will get help and they'll come out a little bit better. But in three of these incidents, they've come out worse. And what's even sadder is that if they go on to have kids, then there's an impact on the kids because of the knock-on effect from the father who was in prison. So that is one that's near and dear to my heart because I have lived it and I'm still living it.
Yeah. Thanks, Lorenzo. And I was trying to check both my Facebook page to see if we have any questions or anybody saying anything. So who else wants to add to that? What else is causing some of the stress factors?
I'll say, Michelle, that the hypocrisy of Black men when it comes to transparency and vulnerability and actually encouraging, the improvement of our mental health. Because so often, us as brothers will say, we're here for you. Talk with me, and I say that because, within our own support groups, we talk heavily about leaning on one another. However, when that opportunity presents itself, there are other brothers who kind of contradict, within their behavior. So they'll, we'll present ourselves in one way of support, but on a contrary side, present ourselves in regards to, how we support one another. The best way I can explain it is that I can tell you, to come speak with me. Let's talk, let's holler, let's chop it up. And we'll do that, but on the flip side, I would not expose the fact that, hey, I'm having my own challenges.
Right.
One of the things that happens when you have brothers who are being willing to be open and vulnerable, there's a level of expectation that you're going to meet me halfway, though. You're going to meet me, feel like that I'm alone and I'm by myself. So I think that if we're going to promote being vulnerable and transparent with one another, that, that we do that with one another and not leave a brother just hanging out there. So
Yeah.
I think we have to take ownership on this as well.
Yeah. So the vulnerability, being vulnerable and talking about it with your brothers is what I'm hearing you say. And I will get into some questions with you and Richard and Will in terms of the services you guys offer through, your work and through your programs. And what does that look like? Right. What do you see? What do you see there? Because, there's also some data that men tend not to seek counseling more than women in general, regardless of race. So then you add race in there and all the things that are going on, and it's higher, right? So anyone else want to answer the question? Factors? DJ, how about, go ahead, Will.
And that's what I was going to say too. Not seeking support early enough can lead to more severe factors or severe mental health later on in life. When you talk about those statistics, you were looking at 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds. If there were services available or support available when they were younger, if someone would identified issues or challenges, because we have adverse childhood experiences that many of us endure and go through, and not having that support early in our lives can be another factor how severe mental wellness is as we get older.
Yeah, DJ, how about you? In terms of your age group, what are you hearing? Things that's driving mental health issues.
I would say in my age group, it's probably twofold. I think kind of how Black women have been asked to wear many hats because our community is unique. We have unique challenges. Black men get asked to wear many hats, but coming up, from being younger, the societal pressure is different. It's kind of like what Mr. Morgan just talked about. We have, any Black man you find has, 1 to 12 extremely traumatic experiences as a child, where the focal point of the experience was learning to get over it. And on top of that, once they learn that, a lot of young boys then take that as, okay, people don't care. And then they learn the basic societal pressure of being a man, providing and taking care of, protecting. And, it becomes twofold because it's difficult enough just to be your own person, but to take charge of other people, to be able to provide for them, and then to put yourself in that situation where you'd be successful enough is a whole different battle. So you get to that 15, 16, 17, 18. Most young boys might question, does what I think, who I am, even matter? And then if they get past that, then it's well, if I can't come up with X, Y, or Z, if I can't be this type of man, am I not valuable? And maybe, between that 20 to 24 range, that's where you get that other struggle where it's, okay, I didn't get into college. I didn't get this GPA. I didn't get into this PhD program. I didn't, and I think now social media has, expounded upon that and made it everyone has money, everyone's traveling, everyone has the beautiful girls and the perfect family, and all these different things. So your value, for a community that already has a poverty issue, something that is exemplifying having money all the time, constantly being shoved in our face, can't be healthy.
Right.
And I don't think that's something that people think about a lot, but I definitely think it affects young Black boys who are essentially told that their honor is essentially associated with how much of those things they can attain for themselves or for other people.
Yeah. Richard, speak to that, because you work with a lot of youth, and I think, Will, you said you do as well. Anything you can add to what DJ said in terms of what you hear?
Yeah, I think something that he mentioned that was powerful is when I work with a lot of these youth, a lot of times it's a lot of things on their mind is that money. And then even with the young ladies, they got to feel like they got to look a certain way because, on social media, everybody look good. Like you said, everybody getting paid, everybody taking all this. And they said actually those who on social media actually go on social media for several hours actually increases anxiety, stress, and even can lead to depression. Because when you're looking on there, you're looking at their life, their so-called life, and then you're looking at your own life, and everything don't look great. Even to the point of we talk to the young people about how they send out emojis and all that. It's a smiley face, but a lot of them are crying in the background. And sometimes people just go along with what they see out there. It's all about the perception. And a lot of times people get hurt by that deception. Even me growing up, and they probably still do it, they glorify going to prison. It's almost like if you told somebody in the hood that you did a bid, they like, oh, we respect you. Compared to the gentleman who said, I got all AP classes. They push him away, it seemed like. So it's like you're living up to whatever they say about the hood, society, the media, and all those different things. And
so the competition piece. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll drive an individual, it'll just make them lose it because they feel like I can't get to that place in my life. And then it also say, well, there's nobody going through but me. I'm all alone. And that's not the truth. There's a lot of other people that got a smile on their face, but they're crying in the dark. But if you don't see that, you think you're by yourself. And that's what leads to a lot of men not want to share neither, because they feel like, they told me man up. So that means don't say nothing.
And it's something DJ said that made me think, men showing emotions. I know for a long time, men have been told, you don't show your emotions. Right. Yeah. And with that then comes the seclusion or just not being real about what's going on because you don't want to show weakness. Showing your emotions was showing that you were weak. Can you guys relate to that statement in terms of?
Yeah, Michelle, definitely. That toxic male masculinity. I think about me personally. I love my father, but my father and I didn't meet until I was like 11, and the reason why is because him and my mom were a relationship my mom had me when she was really young. And so I remember when I first connected with my father, it was all about just trying to toughen me up. Just because I was with my mom, I have more aunts than I have uncles, and so I was always around women. And it was the only way that he knew how to be a father. So it was always, the toughness. You don't need to be crying. And so once I became a father, I had to say to myself what was best for me and my son, right? So that I could share with him that there's an element of being tough, but there's nothing wrong with sharing your feelings. There's nothing wrong with crying. There's nothing wrong with saying that you struggling. Because that pride, you know, as it says in the Bible, like, you know, pride is going to lead to fall, right? So
Hmm.
that was a real big opportunity for me to shift some of the things that was instilled in me. And what's interesting is that in society, it is heightened, and it's also made its way back into the workplace too. So
Yeah, and we'll talk about the workplace. And I have a statement from Miss Angela Morrow, DJ. One of the questions was, how does a mom assure her son we value him for just being who they are? And Lorenzo, you kind of
yeah,
alluded to that,
yeah,
right? Having that
yeah,
real conversation
yeah.
with your son, right?
I'll actually keep going on, and I love to hear the other brothers. So my son's name is Colin, and he would probably hate that I'm talking about him now, but he's 15 years old. He's a hooper, and something that I have done intentionally is to spend time with him, not just about hooping, because it's easy, because I was a hooper, and it's a common language that he and I speak, but I intentionally spend time helping him to understand who he is as a person. So this is where I use a lot of my background in coaching. I have said, listen, there is nothing wrong with you being Colin. You are an introverted kid. You will probably have deep relationships with a very small few people. You know, you will have to learn how to speak up for yourself, you know, because your tendencies are this, and that. So, you know, I actually help him to see who he is, but also know who he has to be in certain situations, but also revert back to no one can be Colin and you need to be Colin.
Mm,
And so like I actually tell him opposite of what my dad told me. Like, I actually want you to love your mom. Like, you are 6'2" now and you getting bigger. There's still nothing wrong with you hugging your mom. There's still nothing wrong with you kissing your mom. Don't try to act all good and tough when you are with your mom and your friends and you want to put on this tough guy role, because that's when we're gonna have problems. You know,
yeah.
be who you are versus who you think you have to be because of this images that you see on social media. So net, I think just being open and honest and letting them know that it's appropriate to be who you are,
Mm,
and encouraging that too.
hmm. Anyone have anything to
And
add to that? Go ahead, Will.
yeah, you know, I actually I have two kids I see I have for therapy. One is 8, white family, and a 15-year-old is black family. And I've literally coached both their moms on how to appreciate their sons for who they are. The 8-year-old's mom, she was like, he's sensitive. I was like, oh, well, I said, well, you know, calling a male sensitive could be offensive. It could bother him, right? So, but well, if he was a female and you said he was sensitive, you would say, well, no, she's intuitive, right? She's in
Mm,
tune with her feelings and emotions. She can express herself. I said, what if that is who your 8-year-old is, right?
hmm.
Words matter to him. Body language, he reads it well. How you say something, the way you say something, it matters to him. So I said to her, if you say this and it triggers him, then say that. Find another way to say it, but don't push him away from expressing his feelings or being in tune with his emotions. He's not sensitive. That's who he is. You know
Right.
that? She was like, I never thought of that. I was like, no, as parents, a lot of times we think of certain things because we have these expectations, which goes to what DJ said and Richard said. You know, there's expectations, identity, perception. And a lot of times we can overwhelm our young people with our own expectations of them and not appreciate who they are. You know, it's
Yeah.
okay for a male to express his feelings. He's not sensitive. You
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
something that we have to get away from. Words matter. How we
Mm.
say things, the way we say them, and how we communicate them with our body as well.
yeah.
It's funny, Richard.
Powerful, Will.
Well, because I'm gonna get to the next question, and that's about labels, right? So, a lot of times there are labels that are used to describe men in general, but even Black men? What are some of those labels and stereotypes, and how do you feel that has impacted the way Black men have maneuvered in this world?
Well, I could say one label as, and I hope you understand what I'm saying by this label. One label can be, see, that's a strong man.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strong man. A lot of time, our young boys don't know what do that mean.
Yeah.
If you see a gentleman never crying, never expressing himself, and somebody say that's a strong man, and you got a 5-year-old looking or a 10-year-old, he gonna say, all right, I look up to that person, so that's what I'm gonna be. And now he don't know really what a strong man, what that man is. So we got to even be careful with those words. I even want to go back to that part where he said, we got to model as men, whether it's the father or some strong mentor, we got to model ourselves in front of our children, in front of our boys. There was one situation that happened with my son. My son is 17. And what happened with him, I was in front of him. I think I made a bad decision or something happened. I cried in front of him. Now, somebody else might say, what is, me growing up the way I grew up, they'll say, man, you weak. Why you cry in front of your son? Because I needed my son to understand it's okay to cry and not be afraid. Because I had to grow up with that mentality to say, you better not cry.
Mm-hmm.
I literally had somebody tell me the next day, my mother died when I was around 2021 of cancer. And this guy came to me and said, be strong, be a strong man for your family. Don't cry. I didn't cry for 5 years, but I caused chaos for 5 years. Until somebody, my older brother came to me and said, man, you need to be delivered. Something going on. I was angry at everybody. I was in the military. I almost got kicked out of the military because I was angry because I wasn't crying. I wasn't letting it out. I went back from the funeral back to the military. They made me go out to the field for 3 months. So wow. I was tearing up stuff. I was causing havoc until one day my brother told me that. And I said, God, heal me. And I never forget it. I was literally driving down Rock Prairie Highway and I cried so hard I had to park my car on the side. I cried until I started laughing. And then I knew that I was healed because I literally had about 50 some pictures in my car, all over the steering wheel, everywhere of my mother, because I just couldn't believe it. Right. But then I started pulling the pictures down when I got healed. So that affect you in so many ways, but we got to model that and understand when we use that label, strong man, and even the label weak man, they got to need to know what is that.
Yeah. Wow. Jasmine. Yeah, I was going to say Jasmine. Yeah.
I'll say this word threat, thank you. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, to be honest, because, based upon, statistics of incarceration, with Black men, you're a threat. When you look at divorce rates for Black families, to your threat to children and to the family itself by not being present, or being a threat to the Black woman in that manner. That's the way it's presented, right? But then you also become looked at as a threat to the workforce. You know what I mean? Because now you become challenging, to diversify and making folks look at equity when it comes to hiring Black men. So you become a threat to those jobs. And let's be honest, when you start messing with folks' money, that becomes an issue. But not only that, you become a threat when it comes to being in positions of power within your community, or being a threat because of wealth, and, buying back our communities, real estate, things of that nature, so that label of becoming a threat, it's almost like, okay, like I said, you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. And all we're doing is trying to do the best that we can,
Yeah. Anybody have anything else to add with regards to that question?
I was going to say, I was going to use masculinity, but only in the sense of performative. And I say that because they use the Black images like this bravado, like, you're the sex object, you're the strongest, you're the biggest, you're the fastest. And I think what it creates a lot of the time in the community is a concept of performative masculinity. And I think, with all the fathers here who are teaching these lessons, there was a lesson my father taught me when I was really little. I think I was like maybe 4. And we were riding bikes together. I fell off the bike, scraped my knee up. So I automatically just started crying because I'm 4. And that's, I'm still close to that age where anything hurts, you start crying. So, my father wasn't upset at me or anything. But he asked me, he said, why are you crying? I said, because I fell. And then he said, well, does it hurt? And I said, yeah, it kind of hurts. And he was like, you know, it hurts, but there are other ways to express yourself than to cry. You can tell me it hurts first. You can do other things because you want me to fix it. So I was like, yeah, I understand that. And he taught his lesson in a different way than many other fathers would teach it. But what he was really teaching me was self-control, proper expression, not just like to lash out at any given moment and do this ultra masculine, like, oh, I'm upset, I'm going to tear everything up. I'm going to flip everything over. And I feel like there was a time out of fear in our community that those two wires got crossed, where out of fear of their sons possibly being killed, people wanted their sons to not express themselves in public. But at the same time, because Black men were always being featured as this ultra masculine figure, we became this, we don't cry, we run a 4-4, bench 225. And that's just how we're built. And it's not true. And you really need that father figure to show you that there is a balance there that exists, that's extremely important, that allows you to be able to, one day have a household and have a wife and kids and be able to balance yourself and not wreck it, because you don't know how to have any control over your emotions as a man. And I think that's something that's still permeated today, even through rap music and everything else, that ultra masculine figure.
Any reactions to what DJ has said? Anything to add or? Nah. Well, cool. I'm going to get into some very specific questions now to our supporters of men. I want to hear your voices around this. So, Jasmine, you talked a little bit about the organizations you founded and the focus. Talk about how long have you had these organizations and the support groups?
Again, I'm the founder and chief visionary officer for the Maine Initiative that stands for Males Addressing Issues and Needs. And so the seed was planted for Maine back in 2006 when I was working in while working in higher education. And it was originally designed to be a success model for Black males in college, being a higher ed, practitioner and administrator, but also being a Black male who had his own struggles with success in higher ed. Myself being, kicked out of school from the first institution I was at, which was at UNC Greensboro. But, over the course of the last 15 years, Maine had definitely evolved into a multifaceted entity, designed to improve the quality of life for Black men and boys that also have helped organizations and agencies with their Black male initiatives, whether it's in community schools, colleges, but also for organizations through, creating these opportunities for growth. But as far as You Good Bro, You Good Bro has been around for a while, but as a legally nonprofit, it's been around for about 2 years, and so that's what we consider the world's greatest solution-focused space that's designed, for a private place for transparency, vulnerability, and liberation. It's a space where it's okay to say that it's not okay, but also a space for sheer accountability. These experiences are, with like-minded brothers who fellowship and embrace the realities of being a man, while also strategizing, knowing how to navigate through those critical areas of what healthy manhood is. So we operate from the hashtag mental health movement, where if you read between the lines, it says men heal men. And I think we all can agree that the goal is that, when a brother asks you good, bro, you could actually say yes and mean it. So.
And so are you finding that men are coming to the support group and actually opening up? Because that's the thing, because sometimes, what I have heard, and I think someone alluded to this, they'll come and maybe they won't speak up, right? So how do you break that barrier to get men to speak up in your support groups?
Well, for one, you have to, create that space, and you ground rules, you let it be known that this is a place for transparency, vulnerability, but also a place for growth. And usually what happens, I'll say, we were meeting face to face, prior to COVID, with about an average of about 20, 25 brothers, majority of them who actually live here in Greenville, North Carolina. But there were some brothers traveling from Raleigh, Rocky Mount, Wilson. But when the pandemic hit, man, it just opened the floodgates, man, where the attendance had increased, but from surrounding cities and towns to, areas like Charlotte, Durham, but also brothers from Maryland, Detroit, Colorado, Delaware. Yeah. And so that age range went from like 18 to brothers that's in their 60s. And so, and these are brothers who work in healthcare, education, the legal system, some college students, et cetera, who seem to have it all together, but they're, some of their backgrounds, and some brothers have been incarcerated, gone through a divorce, grew up in single parent homes, had some issues just like myself of being molested, some battling addiction, some with diagnosed mental illness, some brothers, they only had just a GED, with brothers that are PhD, but I'll say that, once one brother, pretty much puts themselves out there and exposes themselves, it's that's when the floodgates open up.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what does it take to get men to open up, and having that one person who's transparent is definitely one of those ways. What advice would you give to a man who's considering attending a support group? What advice would you give them?
Right. I would tell them, research the groups that are available in your local area, and especially with the expansion that has occurred during the pandemic, that there are a number of virtual groups out there. You want to check out the values of these groups, their approach, what their reviews are online, if you're checking them out, what foundation that the support groups are built on, and to actually research the leaders of these support groups, But honestly, it's just like dating, you shop around until you find the one that fits you, and just see what it's all about. Remember that support group is designed for their support. I also urge brothers to just make a promise to themselves to communicate upon arrival that while you're attending, even if it's just only to listen and to be seen, because just because it's a support group doesn't mean that you have to contribute verbally. And just for some, making it to the support group is enough. It took enough courage to expose themselves to say, I need the support. So attending support groups, man, it poses its own level of vulnerability in itself, and it takes courage, because you're exposing yourself to other men who also need brotherly support from men who see the value of these types of movements. So I encourage brothers to ask another brother also to attend with them, so that they feel that they are not alone, if they don't already know a brother that's already a part of a support group. So, it's ultimately, Michelle, a faith walk, and it's about trust. Usually when one brother breaks the ice and exposes themselves, the levees break, the floodgates open, which really kind of gives brothers the support that they need, and almost the permission almost to be their transparent selves. So
Yeah. And one thing you were saying, and it just made me think a little bit. The other piece is they get there and they realize they're not by themselves, right? Because a lot of times, you guys had said it earlier, a lot of times men might think, or even women might think they're the only ones dealing with a certain situation, and you find that you're not alone. Yeah, Lorenzo, I want to talk, because I skipped a little bit. Jasmine, were you going to say something else?
No, I was just going to say, just even with my own journey right now, of actually, with the work with You Good Bro, but also we have to get into this work of isolation elimination, because so much happens behind closed doors that brothers are dealing with, and because because of what society presents, or so many other factors, that that you are alone when really you are not. And being in a support group, I'm just going to say that it kind of gives you that opportunity to realize that you're not alone, and you can actually go through a level of healing, and you don't have to go through it by yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm gonna pivot a little bit, Lorenzo, to the workplace. Because as I mentioned earlier, and you mentioned, we're both coaches in the workplace. You being a male, you might experience things a little bit different than I. So talk a little bit about what are some of the topics that men are coming to you with in the workplace, from the standpoint of wellness, right? Well, mental health.
Yeah. So thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that it never starts out in that way. Like, no one shows up and says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about my mental health," because, at least in our organization, we do a pretty good job of promoting other resources. But what's interesting is that people, specifically African-American men, come to talk about topics such as balancing work life, career development, trying to get another role, seeking a sponsor or mentor, or just truly just not happy with where they are within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you find after maybe 3 to 4 sessions, and I kind of get there a little bit quickly, because what I'm about to say, I found it's real. What you find is that this is all born, those are all true. But the real symptom, those are all symptoms to the root cause problem, which is psychological safety.
Mm.
And it's the lack of feeling safe within the organization that's causing African American men, at least in my situation, to experience things such as pressure, stress, this ability to have to make something happen quick, either be because they're head of household, or either be because they look all around them and they feel like there's other people that have done things that they should have gotten, such as a level promotion, project, or another great another great opportunity. I think within the last year, with what's happening within the world, there's this feeling of self-reflection and this inventory taking of where am I at in life, and is this organization helping me to kind of move forward, or is it holding me back? But what I always get back down to is brothers aren't feeling psychologically safe, and what they're seeking my support on is how to sort these things out, because they have some choices that they have to make.
Yeah.
And the choices are either staying in the organization. The choices are either doing things differently. And doing things differently means playing the game differently, showing up differently, or in many cases taking that risk to put themselves out there and lead the organization. But all of it stems from not feeling safe.
Yeah. And to your point, and I don't know if I mentioned this because you and I both have been coaches for development programs for diverse men, as well as women. But that vulnerability, right, as you said, that safety piece for them, just like, outside the workplace, there's a guard up inside the workplace as well, because you don't want to be seen as weak or anything like that. So having to deal with that. What advice would you give to a leader who is dealing with a minority male in particular in the workplace?
Yeah,
Just
so
knowing all these other things that we talked about earlier.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say is going to seem like it's a formula, but it's not a formula, because these are just steps. Your authenticity, however that leader has evolved personally, is really going to be the end all be all. But I think it goes down to, and I'll break these down: establishing connection, listening and learning, openly sharing, and then obviously protecting the trust. So I'll break it down. Establishing connection means that you are authentically, whether you're a white male or a white woman, or a black male or a black woman, whoever you are, that you are intentional and you are authentically finding ways to connect with this individual beyond just the average business talk day to day. Get to really know that individual, because if I just use me as an example, culturally we are private people. Some of us are more private than others, and we don't really trust easy either. So having that connection that's born out of the discussions beyond work, makes you feel like this individual cares more about you than they do the business. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't care about the business, but they care about you as a person. The second one is around listening and learning, right? So it's being intentional to listen to the individual, right? Listen to words that give you a sense as to their style. Listen to their stories. Listen to their challenges. Inquire about the challenges. One of the best leaders that I had, she's not here in the organization, and you and I know her well, Michelle. She was magical at this, and I didn't even really see it coming, but she authentically, consistently created space for just me to share about my background, for me to share about my family. There was only a few questions that she would oftentimes ask, and I would just go on. And she always, it didn't matter how busy the business was. She consistently created that space. When I flew in to see her, it was never a time in which we didn't meet for dinner. It was never a time, and what's interesting is that she didn't look like me either.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is that it was never a time that we didn't meet for dinner. And I immediately brought down my walls of those walls that we typically put up. I immediately felt safe with her. That didn't mean that I took her for granted, but I immediately felt safe. I immediately felt that I could be Lorenzo. And what's interesting is that everybody on our team felt the same exact way. The third thing I mentioned is openly sharing, right? So using this individual as an example, I found myself openly sharing about challenges that I, as an African American, we as an African American, kind of face in the organization. And as all of us know, those are things that we typically don't share because those could be very dicey discussions. They could be used against you, and we typically don't do that. But I felt very safe in openly sharing, and as a result, what I experienced from her is not this past, but just a true understanding of me as a person, and someone that was willing to take appropriate risk on my behalf. Meaning, she didn't say, well, let's just take a risk on him because he's never going to have the shot. But basically, you guys are missing the boat here for whatever reason. I'm going to put my bet behind Lorenzo, and I'm going to stand behind him, and I'm going to stand with him. And once I saw that, and once I heard that man, there was nothing that was not going to make me walk over, coals of fire or water for her and for our team, because those are things that we typically have to work so hard in order to get. And then lastly, she never asked me for it, but she had my unbelievable heart. She had my trust. We still stay connected. But the point is that these things didn't take years. This happened very quickly. But I would say that it wasn't just her following these steps. She had done her work too.
Yeah.
Right. She had taken her own journey before I'd ever got on her team. And it was just like, whenever we connected, it was like, man, is this real?
Yeah.
So my point is this: in order for me to be an effective coach beyond people who look like me, I got to take my own journey, my own cultural journey, my own, self-discovery and curiosity to really want to understand people and difference in order to show up and have a catalyst in those individuals. And so to round this out is it doesn't matter as much that the person looks like you. Of course, that helps. But if the person doesn't, like if they've done their own work, they understand the issues, they understand the challenges, I have seen where it makes a hell of a difference.
Yeah. It's that allyship. right? Because we're going through a lot. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that, what happens outside the workplace, eventually for individuals, you are bringing that into the workplace, right? I mean, we are who we are, and it impacts how you show up in the workplace. So how do we make sure that we're able to support African Americans, our men, right, who are coming into the workforce, having a lot of this stuff on your shoulders, right? But Lorenzo, thank you for that. Richard and Well, just talk about the counseling piece a little bit. How do we begin to assist Black men in changing their negative perceptions about seeking counseling?
Like I said before, I think it's really going to stop this vicious cycle. They got to start seeing it as youngsters, because like I said, I work with teenagers and they're doing the same thing. Well, it's a learned behavior. This ain't something that they just come out the womb and say this is what I'm gonna start doing, but it's a learned behavior of things that they see, and or what society tells them that this is what a real man look like. This is what a strong man. You don't cry, you don't do these things. So they grow up with that same mentality, and they don't have that space to grow up and talk to somebody. I grew up in a single family. I had a lot of questions, and I was very angry as a child. Had to take anger management class because I had so many questions. I was frustrated because I couldn't understand why my dad wasn't in my life, even though he lived 10 minutes away from me. And I kept trying to figure out, why do he not want to be here? I just don't, and I couldn't understand that from him, and I wanted to hear from him. Because there's certain things, mom gonna play her role, but mom can't really be a dad. Even though moms have to sometimes play that role, it's a difference. And it's vice versa. A dad can't be a mom, because there's certain things that we want to go to our dad to. Or if you don't have a dad, at least some male mentor, somebody you could connect to and be able to say, oh, it's cool to share. It's cool to open up. One of the things that I struggle with, mentors. I struggle with trying to get mentors growing up, because what my mother projected to me is what I thought. When I was growing up in a predominantly Black area, when you got a mentor, it's because you was having bad behavior. That's kind of how it used to be growing up. You need a mentor because I'm tired, I'm sick of your mess. You acting up in school, you're doing it. And I was doing pretty well in school. I was getting good grades. So I said, okay, so that means I don't need mentors. So I grew up with this independence. I don't need other people. I got myself. And then, so when other people started to help me, I was like, I don't need your help. Because what I learned was I only need your help when I'm in trouble. And that's the same thing with everything. Is sometimes we can come to the rescue. It's changing now, but it seemed like growing up, people would come to the rescue in the middle of a crisis instead of doing some type of prevention. It was always intervention.
Right.
And that's what, so you grow up with this mentality of, I don't need you unless I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Don't come around unless you're in trouble.
Intervention versus prevention. I like that. And that's where we have to kind of change our mindset in terms of counseling, right?
Yeah.
Don't do it just when you got an issue.
Right.
How do you get in front of it, right? So it doesn't turn into an issue. Will, what would you add to that?
It's really changing the narrative, right? A lot of times when the individuals see me, they don't see me as a therapist. They don't know I'm a therapist until I tell them. They're coming seeking mental health counseling, and it kind of relates to what Jasmine was talking about earlier. When you come to see me for therapy, it's person-centered. So depending on who the individual is, I might use cognitive behavioral therapy, or it might be solution-focused. Solution-focused with African-American males more, especially young adults and older. But changing that narrative is very important. I had a young man tell me he didn't want therapy. I was like, okay, what are you struggling with? And then, well, what do you want? He said, well, I know I have trouble with anger and I want help. I said, well, then let's call it the help you need. Let's not call it therapy, because therapy comes with that stigma and that negative connotation. So it's really changing that narrative. Not wearing credentials, right? A lot of people will wear their credentials. Like, that's who they are. I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm that. Self-disclosure is very important. If I present myself as someone who has had lived experiences and I've learned to overcome them, and I'm sharing with you interventions and strategies I use myself, you don't see me as someone with this education and these credentials. You see me as a real person. And then we can engage in the therapeutic alliance and go on that journey together, changing the narrative.
Hmm. So what would you guys say for counseling to be successful, what should people expect to come to you with? How
I
should they
just
show
say
up?
when they show up, I'd say just let them be whoever, and we represent ourselves that way, and have some type of cultural competency, because that's going to be a big thing. That's going to be important. Showing respect. Uh, but I'm a big person on relationship building.
Hmm.
I think that's, to me, I feel like that's the major key, because sometimes you might not know that person. There was a young lady that was in one of my groups, and for she was dealing with substance abuse, 14 years old. You're talking about acid, cocaine, all that stuff. And she came to my group, ignored me, didn't pay attention to me. And I just kept staying on her. I kept trying to build a relationship until eventually that point, she said, Mr. T, I'm done with the program, but I'm gonna let you know, you probably didn't know, I was on contemplating committing suicide. But she said, because for some reason you wouldn't stop dealing with me, you didn't give up, you kept dealing with me, and it made me want to start listening to you. And when I started listening to you, it started changing my life.
Hmm.
And that been a couple of years ago, and she's still doing well today. So I think building a relationship before you let them know these my credentials, this is all what I could do, that I'm educated this, before you do all that, just like even in a teacher role, they want to know you care before you teach them anything. And
Right.
that's one of my biggest things. I want you to know I care before I say anything, because once they know you care and you've been in that relationship, now they're removing that psychological safety, as Lorenzo was saying, because that safety is an important thing. They need to feel safe in the group. If they don't feel safe, they're up out of there. Nothing
Yeah.
to get done, or they just sit there acting like things are being done. So I think that's important. The key is when they come to our service, it's all about relationship. It's about your needs and looking at the whole person, not just focusing on one area, but looking at the whole thing. As I said before, I work with some that deal with substance abuse. But when they come to my group, they be like, this ain't a substance abuse. I said, it is. But I said, I'm not focused on it. I'm focused on, how you're doing with your workouts. Are you exercising? Are you eating right? We look at the whole thing. So I let them know that you can come here and just be you. And whatever you say, because that's one of the things that they always say to me. They say, when I come here, I can say anything to you, and I don't see this look on your face like, wow, it look like it's okay what you're going through. So they need to feel that too. They need to feel that sense of empathy. And
Yeah.
that'll help them out too. So relationship and empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Rapport is important. But I remember Jasmine saying it earlier. If someone shows up, I thank them. I really thank them, because that's that first step. Like, you really came in and it wasn't court ordered or anything like that, but just showing up. I thank them for always showing up. And if they come back a second time, I mean, you usually have success when people are showing up. And I
Yeah.
make sure that I thank them for being there.
Yeah. And Richard, and this will be the last couple of questions, because you're also an associate pastor, and we know we have men's ministries in churches. How would you describe the spiritual counseling from secular counseling? If someone is seeking one or the other, wanting to seek one or the other.
Yeah, if they want to seek Christian counseling, a Christian counseling, especially in the African American community, that can be definitely a great support. If you look over back in history, that was the major support. Then eventually came a time where people kind of strayed away from that and went to just straight traditional counsel, but then going back to it. I'm a Christian counselor too, so actually I do have a client that seek out the Christian counseling. And one of the things she told me was, I really appreciate the Christian counseling part of it, because he said, sometimes I go to church and I feel like I'm alone, or I'm the only one with this problem. But it's good to hear somebody who's a Christian counselor understand that I'm not this demonic or demons taking over my life because I have a mental illness. So it's just those right there. And then when you come with dealing with somebody, you can talk about prayer. And then we can talk about the scriptures and take those scriptures on how that can help that individual throughout the week. There's times where God may give me a scripture and I give it to that person. There have been times where they say, I needed that scripture. Some things was going on in my mind and I needed that turn. I mean, my day is going to turn around because of that. And then even if you even look at a study, there's a study that those who pray actually decrease anxiety, stress, and even that can sometimes lead to depression. So I think Christian counseling is definitely needed. I also look at it this way: traditional counseling can be a resource, but God is the source,
Mm,
and you got to start from there. And when you start from there, because I tell people, after you go to church and get prayer and all that, now make sure you go to your groups.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you can't say, Lord, heal me, deliver me, and then you go back home and do nothing. That's the same thing as somebody who's say they got cancer and they got chemo. You can't say, all right, I pray for you, go home, forget about chemo. No. After we pray, you believe and have faith, but go make sure you take your chemo, make sure you take your medication. So it's the
Absolutely.
same thing when it comes to mental
Absolutely.
health.
Absolutely. And I'm going to end on that word, you guys. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your guidance and being so transparent about your own personal situations. What advice, we'll leave it on this. So what is your advice you would give to men out there in terms of their mental health and seeking support? What would you say?
You're not alone.
Not alone.
You're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing, because that's where sometimes we feel like in that corner thinking we're alone. You're not alone. There's
Yeah.
others who need that help too, and
Mhm.
it's available.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anything more? DJ, what you gonna say? We gonna say something, DJ?
Yeah, I would just say that you're enough. You know,
You're enough.
what you succeed at, what you fail at, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Lorenzo or Will or Jasmine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll say that, it's difficult and everybody might not understand it. So to say it's going to be simple as opening up and speaking and sharing, it'll be a lie. But, whether, the issues are genetic, traumatic, it doesn't matter. The truth is where there's power and transparency and vulnerability. And so, like the brothers have already been saying, you're not alone, because if, you know, there are those who are willing to help you on your journey, so you're not alone, and don't quit. As
Yeah.
cliche as it might sound, do not quit.
Do not quit. You're not alone and don't quit. Will, you have anything to add to that? Okay. Cool. Well, brothers, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I appreciate all of you. This is an important topic. And like I said, I really wanted to ensure men were hearing from men on this topic. And this weekend is Father's Day. I don't know how many of you are fathers, but happy Father's Day to all of you. I'm going to put you in the green room. So give me a minute and then I'm going to close out everybody. But thank you for spending time with me this evening. Like I said, this is an important topic. I thought this was a very important topic in light of everything that has been going on. And with me being a Black female and seeing my father, my family and friends, and just seeing their reactions to everything that's going on, I thought this was an important topic to cover. So I thank you. Thank you for that. Again, for those of you who might be joining late, I am the CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting. I am a career and life coach. And my business really is about helping others in any way that I can. And Real Conversations is just one of those platforms that I leverage to do that. So I want to thank you for joining me. I will put up some resources on my Facebook page. The word, you're not alone, don't quit. So on that note, I'm going to end this conversation. I'm not even going to talk about what I have coming up. I feel really filled by what I heard tonight. So I hope that you have been filled as well. And seek out these brothers. The flyers out there, most of them are on LinkedIn. So seek out these brothers. I know they won't mind if you reach out to them and ask for some guidance and help. And on that note, I am going to end this session. Have a good evening.